There we go. There we go. I think we're live. Hey, everybody. How you doing? Andy Abramson here, just jumping on for a couple minutes here on Circle. Hopefully you're doing well. Pretty wild that it is March and we are barreling towards quarter number two, which is just wild to me that we're already one quarter of the way through the year. And so hopefully your first quarter has been really good. We actually just got done yesterday with our leader community, our Central Texas leader community. So we had a group of college and young adult ministry leaders here in our house, which was so fun to jump in, peek under the hoods of ministry. If you ever get a chance to be in a leader community, would encourage you to do that. Got a chance to do some hot seats, some 90-day goal setting, some trainings, and it was man, just super good to be a part of, and we loved it. What I want to do today is actually jump off on a conversation that we had during our leader community on Monday, where we talked about this idea of asking the question, what is our finish line? Like, what is the destination that we're hoping that people will get to when they're a part of our ministry? And so, really, when we think about ministry, I think the tension that lies underneath what we're doing is that we can be active, we can be doing a lot of things, but still internally feel a little bit unclear with what we're doing. So lots are happening, but the question is it producing the fruit that we want it to produce? So what happens is it makes it easy for us to drift and into managing programs, managing activities instead of forming and creating and making disciple makers. And so pressure can begin to make us lose sight of what the end goal is. And so things can, you can go through and do your programs and do your midweeks, do your Sunday school classes, do your groups. But then there's this like tension at the end of the night of asking the question, is what I'm doing really producing and helping people on their journey of faith, even though ministry's happening, even though programs are full steam ahead. And so really the core question is what is our ministries, what are they producing? What's the fruit that our ministries are producing? What are we actually aiming at in these ministries, and what's the finish line? If I were to ask you a question of like, we do this exercise in our coaching process of identifying what your dream disciple, by the time that somebody graduates from your college ministry, moves on into out of young adult ministry into being a fully fledged adult, what are the things that you want to be true about their lives? What do you want to be true about who they are and what you're forming in them through the activities and the programs that you are building? And here's the question that we ultimately kind of put in front of the leaders here over the last couple of days in our leader community is, can a student or young adult feel successful in your ministry without becoming a disciple maker? Right? So can they feel like they've won because they've attended programs, because they're serving, because they're showing up to what you want them to show up, without becoming a disciple maker and feel like that they have hit the bullseye? And so I think that that's a question that we have to wrestle with as leaders, because I think if students or young adults can feel like they succeeded in our ministry without becoming a disciple maker, I think something's off. And so one of the things that we want to think about is how do we begin to look at what our system is producing? So for some of us, we need to think about this idea of how do we begin to move the finish line? Right? So how some of our ministries functionally, what we are rewarding is attendance or connecting or serving or staying involved in the things we're doing. But disciple making requires more than just involvement. And the issue is that these things aren't bad. It's not bad that people attend. It's not bad that people are connecting in your small group. The issue is when those things become the finish line, When participation becomes the finish line, we need to recognize that participation is not formation. Participation is not transformation. Engagement is good, but it's not the end goal. Showing up to your programs is a good thing, but that's not the win. We might be celebrating actually movement without transformation. And so here's what we encourage the leaders to do is what it does it look like for us to begin to move our finish lines, not doing more, not necessarily just like blowing up your ministry, not creating pressure and guilt in your people, but for us as leaders to be actually clear on what winning, what success, what faithful ministry actually looks like. And what I'm not talking about is for us to totally just scrap everything and do a total rebuild. But what I'm talking about is re-clarifying, or for some of us, maybe clarifying for the first time of what we consider what is the win. Sometimes the biggest shift isn't adding something new, it's actually redefining what the win is. So maybe it's not about adding something, but it's actually just about stepping back and redefining what the win is. Here's one simple way in which we framed it, right? So there's really kind of two movements that we can have in our ministry of a pathway for our college students or young adults. We talked about these ideas, these two movements as being two different pathways. And on one pathway, it's this, what we would talk about as the engagement movement, right? This engagement movement where the goal is for them to attend. Once they attend, we want them to connect into other relationships. And ultimately, what we want them to do is to contribute. Now, these aren't necessarily bad things. The problem is Jesus's movement for his disciples and the people that he was calling to live a life of faith was not about an engagement movement. It was actually around a multiplication movement where he was interacting with them in relationship. There was a calling on their life. Then he was beginning to train and equip them ultimately to send them out to engage the world. So instead of an engagement movement, I think what we need to begin to look at within our ministries is a multiplication movement. How do we call? How do we train? And then how do we deploy and send? The problem isn't the first movement. The problem is when the first movement becomes the whole story. Okay. So it's not bad that people attend and then they connect, they serve. But if that's all that they're doing and we're not helping flip that into from engagement movement into a multiplication movement, then I think ultimately there's going to be a disconnect that we feel in our ministries. So the problem isn't that first movement. The problem is when that first movement becomes the finality of what our ministry is. And so good ministries will gather people, but great ministries will call people, form, train, equip people, and then ultimately send people. And so really the question becomes for us, and this is the conversation we were having over the last few days, is what are we actually rewarding? What are we celebrating visibly of what people can see? And then even beginning to diagnose in our processes where our students may be stopping or getting stuck. And then after a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, what are we actually training those people to move towards? And I think it's really important for us really to reframe some of these questions and to reframe that programs are not the finish line. Programs really are the infrastructure of our ministry. So think about your gatherings, your groups, your leader meetings, your serve teams, all of those things are good spaces, but we need to think about these things as formation environments, equipping environments that we then are going to help train and deploy people. So, how are we calling people in those spaces and then ultimately training them and equipping them? So, the point is not just to run a program well, the point is to be a part of the formation of people through those different programs. See, we need to understand that programs are a tool, they're not the target. Um, there's something that we can leverage and utilize, but it's not the end goal. Our environment should train people, not just try to retain people, try to keep people in the walls of our ministry spaces. And so for some of us, we need to rewrite those finish lines, right? We need to rewrite the finish lines that we need to think about what is the end goal? What is a thriving college student? What does a thriving young adult look like in our ministry? And is it pushing beyond attendance? Is it pushing beyond being connected? Is it pushing beyond serving? Is it moving towards following Jesus in their lives in deeper ways, beginning to fall in love with him in deeper ways? Can they articulate the gospel? Are they inviting other people to for them to pour their life to become disciple makers? Are they living on mission on their campus, in their workplaces, in their homes, their dorms, their apartment complexes, wherever they're called? Are we helping equip them to live a life on mission? And so for us, it needs to be less about getting plugged in and more about formation. It's less about plugging people into a role, but helping them embody a way of life, of living forward into saying yes into what God has called them and growing into becoming a disciple maker. And so my encouragement for us is that for some of us, we need to step back and ask some of these questions. How do we begin? And this is not like scrapping everything and overhauling everything. And this is what we talked about over the last few days of how do we actually reframe. And here's what I would encourage you to do is maybe start small. Is it one environment, one shift, one experiment, one kind of finish line rewrite, right? Is that what we need to do instead of kind of and slowly begin to move some of those things forward? So maybe it's your leader meeting, right? Where you're beginning to think through what is the win and the finish line of helping equip and deploy these leaders in our leader meeting. Maybe it's your small groups, right? Moving from discussion only oriented groups into action and faith filled followers. Maybe it's testimonies that you need to highlight, not just highlighting how many people come to your different ministries or your meetings that you're having. Maybe it's one on one, the people that you're pouring into, you're discipling. Maybe it's helping them. My camera's doing this little like, I think I got to do this. And then there it goes. And it'll stop. So helping them in your one on one to understand what, what living a life of faith looks like. So my encouragement for you is be willing to do that diagnosis, right? For me, the real win here is even this conversation and for you to begin to step back and look at your ministry. For you, my hope is the win would be more clarity, honest reflection, a faithful next step, not perfection. All of us, and that was the thing over the last couple days that we had leaders for the leader community here. All of us are working on our ministries. We're continually looking at those spaces, looking at those places, and helping us figure out what moving forward really looks like. And so super fun. So hopefully that was encouraging for you today. Hope you're doing well. Man, it's been a good season. So proud of the work and the leaders that we get to be a part of. We're going to try to do this every so often, is just kind of do some kind of what we're calling more micro trainings in circle here specifically, so we can kind of help you think through just what leading your ministry ultimately looks like. Okay, so have a good rest of the day. Reach out to us if you need something. We love y'all. Can't wait to catch you on a call, catch you on a training, catch you on in an in-person environment. Couple things before I go, highlight real quick. 2 weeks from now, we got a 1 day, or actually a leader lab in Orlando, Florida. If you're in the Orlando area, would love to see you there. Also, we are doing a longer form training in April on team building. So that's kind of our next big conversation that we're going to have. In fact, I think we're even talking about leveraging a cohort off of that to just talk through team building as well. Okay, love y'all. Keep us posted if you need something. Proud of the work you're doing. Keep evaluating your finish line. Okay, we'll talk to you later.